What if everything you thought you knew about Camilla's past was only half the story? For decades, she's been painted as the woman who shattered Princess Diana's marriage. But the truth runs much deeper. Shocking new revelations from her ex-husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, expose a betrayal no one saw coming. Was Camilla really in love with Charles all along? Or was there something even darker at play? Stay with us as we uncover the secrets that changed royal history forever. The affair that shook the royal family. Long before Princess Diana entered the picture, there was another woman who had already captured Prince Charles' heart, Camilla Shand. Their relationship began in the early 1970s when they met at a polo match. The attraction was instant and they quickly developed a deep connection. However, the royal family did not consider Camilla a suitable match for the future king. Unlike Diana, she was neither aristocratic enough nor perceived as pure and untainted in the way that the monarchy desired for a queen. When Charles was sent away on naval duty in the mid-1970s, Camilla made a shocking decision. She married Andrew Parker Bowles, a British Army officer and a well-connected figure within the upper-class circles. But was this truly an act of love, or was there something more calculated behind it? Many believe that Camilla's marriage was not about romance, but rather about securing her social standing. Andrew, a known womanizer, had his own fair share of affairs, and their union seemed to be one of convenience rather than deep affection. Meanwhile, Camilla's bond with Charles never faded, even after she became Mrs. Parker Bowles. The connection between them remained strong, leading to whispers that their relationship never truly ended. Behind closed doors, they continued to exchange letters, meet in private, and sustain an emotional affair that would later become one of the most infamous scandals in British royal history. While the world focused on the fairy tale love story of Charles and Diana in the early 1980s, a darker reality was unfolding, one that would eventually destroy the illusion of a perfect royal marriage and change the course of the monarchy forever. Andrew Parker Bowles, the silent victim? For decades, the focus of the Charles-Camilla affair has been on how it affected Princess Diana. But there is one man whose perspective has been largely ignored, Andrew Parker Bowles. While Camilla was engaging in a long-standing relationship with Charles, Andrew was not an innocent bystander. Their marriage was far from conventional, with rumors of both of them having extramarital affairs. Yet Andrew's silence on the matter has always raised question. Did he know about Camilla's emotional attachment to Charles? If so, why did he allow it to continue? Andrew was a man of status and influence, deeply intertwined with the British aristocracy and military elite. Some speculate that he turned a blind eye to the affair because he had his own romantic entanglements, while others believe he accepted his wife's relationship with Charles as an unavoidable reality. After all, the royal family operated under a different set of rules, where personal desires often took a backseat to duty and tradition. Even after his marriage to Camilla ended in the mid-1990s, Andrew remained reserved about the scandal, never publicly criticizing his ex-wife or Prince Charles. But now, recent revelations suggest that Andrew may not have been as indifferent as he appeared. Some close insiders claim that he was deeply hurt by Camilla's relationship with Charles, but due to the social expectations of his class, he refrained from expressing his emotions. If Andrew was indeed a victim of betrayal, why did he never confront Charles? Was it out of loyalty, pride, or something else entirely? His silence over the years has fueled even more speculation, leaving many wondering whether he was a willing participant in the complex web of royal relationships or simply a man trapped in a situation he could not control. Princess Diana's painful discovery. When Princess Diana married Prince Charles in the early 1980s, the world believed they were witnessing the beginning of a fairy tale romance. The glamorous princess, beloved by the people, seemed to have it all: youth, beauty, and a future as queen. But behind the grand wedding and dazzling public appearances, Diana was struggling with a painful truth. She was never Charles's first choice. She realized early in their marriage that his heart belonged to someone else. But it wasn't until later that the full extent of the betrayal became painfully clear. In a now infamous moment during an official engagement in the early 1990s, Diana made a heartbreaking confession. "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." With those words, she exposed the painful reality she had endured for years, but perhaps the most devastating moment of all came when she confronted Camilla face to face. At a party in the late 1980s, Diana walked up to Camilla and, in an uncharacteristic moment of boldness, told her, "I want my husband." The confrontation was shocking, but Camilla, rather than denying the affair, reportedly responded with indifference. Diana's discovery of the full extent of Charles and Camilla's relationship marked the beginning of the end of her marriage. Her deep emotional turmoil played out in the public eye, with interviews and secret recordings revealing her loneliness, struggles with mental health, and desperate attempts to win back her husband's love. But no matter what she did, Charles remained emotionally devoted to Camilla. The public may have adored Diana, but in the end it was Camilla who had Charles's unwavering loyalty, something that only deepened the wounds of the so-called People's Princess. The Queen's disapproval and the royal fallout. From the moment Queen Elizabeth learned about her son's deep attachment to Camilla Shand, she made her feelings crystal clear. Camilla was not an acceptable bride for the future king. The royal family had strict expectations, and Camilla, despite her aristocratic connections, did not meet them. In the early 1970s, when Charles was expected to find a wife, the monarchy insisted on a young, suitable bride who had not been previously involved in serious relationships. Camilla, having had past romantic entanglements, was deemed unfit for the role of princess, let alone queen. But the Queen's disapproval didn't just end there. When Charles' affair with Camilla was publicly exposed in the early 1990s, it sent shockwaves through the monarchy. The Queen was reportedly furious, not just because of the scandal itself, but because it had severely damaged the royal family's reputation. The affair turned the public against Charles and Camilla, and the monarchy, already struggling with modern scrutiny, found itself in crisis. For years, the Queen refused to acknowledge Camilla, even after Charles divorced Diana in the mid-1990s. It wasn't until the early 2000s, after extensive efforts to rehabilitate Camilla's public image, that the Queen began to soften her stance. Even then, her approval came with strict conditions. Camilla could be Charles's wife, but not immediately queen, at least not in title. The damage from the scandal had been done, and though Camilla eventually found acceptance within the royal family, the shadows of her past mistakes would follow her for decades to come. Why did Andrew attend Camilla and Charles' wedding? When Prince Charles and Camilla finally married in the early 2000s, many assumed it was the end of a decades-long scandal. However, one unexpected guest at the wedding reignited speculation: Andrew Parker Bowles. His presence at the ceremony was puzzling to many. Why would a man whose wife had engaged in a notorious affair with the future king willingly attend their wedding? Was it an act of civility, or was there something more complex beneath the surface? Some royal insiders suggest that Andrew's attendance was simply a reflection of his aristocratic upbringing, where personal grievances were often set aside in favor of maintaining decorum. Others believe that Andrew and Camilla had long moved past any bitterness, as their marriage had been unconventional from the start. Some reports even claim that Andrew and Charles maintained a cordial relationship throughout the years, making his presence at the wedding less surprising than it seemed. But there's also another possibility, that Andrew had always known that Camilla's heart belonged to Charles and had come to terms with it long before their marriage ended. While Andrew's motives remain unclear, his attendance at the wedding signified something larger than just a gesture of goodwill. It symbolized the closing of a chapter that had gripped the British public for decades. But for many, it also served as a reminder of the painful betrayal that had destroyed more than just a marriage. It had shattered the image of a royal love story that had once seemed unbreakable. Camilla's marriage to Andrew, true love or social arrangement? To the outside world, Camilla and Andrew Parker Bowles appeared to be a picture-perfect couple, an upper-class duo with the right connections, status, and influence. But behind closed doors, their marriage was far from conventional. Many have speculated that their union was less about love and more about practicality. Camilla came from an aristocratic background, but she wasn't considered a suitable bride for Prince Charles at the time. Marrying Andrew, a man with deep military and social ties, provided her with the stability and status expected of a woman in her position. But their relationship was complicated from the start. Even before their wedding in the early 1970s, Andrew was known for his wandering eye. He had numerous affairs, some of which were widely known within elite circles. Camilla, too, had maintained her connection with Charles, and some believe that Andrew was aware of this from the beginning. Rather than a marriage built on romance, it seemed to be an arrangement where both parties understood the rules: discretion, appearances, and mutual benefit. As the years went on, their unconventional marriage became more evident. Friends of the couple have claimed that they led largely separate lives, with Andrew focusing on his military career and Camilla continuing her emotional affair with Charles. By the early 1990s, when Charles's affair with Camilla became public, it was clear that their marriage was in its final stages. They officially divorced in the mid-1990s, but even after parting ways, Andrew and Camilla remained amicable, further fueling speculation that their marriage had never been one of deep love, but rather one of societal expectation and unspoken agreements. The Parker Bowles family's hidden role. The British aristocracy has long been known for its intricate social connections and unwritten rules. The Parker Bowles family was no exception. Andrew's lineage was filled with military leaders and figures with strong ties to the royal family. His father, Derek Parker Bowles, was a respected figure in the British Army, and his mother, Anne Parker Bowles, was deeply embedded in high society. With such powerful connections, some believe that the Parker Bowles family played a quiet but significant role in the way the Camilla-Charles affair unfolded. Insiders suggest that the Parker Bowles family was well aware of Camilla's ongoing relationship with Charles, but chose to turn a blind eye. In aristocratic circles, affairs were not uncommon, especially when marriages were based more on duty than passion. As long as discretion was maintained, extramarital relationships were often tolerated. This has led many to speculate that Andrew's family may have accepted Camilla's attachment to Charles as long as it did not create a public scandal. However, when the affair did become public in the early 1990s, the Parker Bowles family faced intense scrutiny. For years, they had maintained their reputation as a respected family, but now their name was tangled in one of the biggest royal scandals in history. While they never publicly commented on the situation, their silence only added to the mystery. Did they actively protect Camilla and Charles's relationship, or were they simply caught in a storm they could no longer control? Either way, their involvement, or lack thereof, raises questions about just how much influence they had in shaping the narrative of this royal affair. Did Camilla ever truly love Andrew? One of the biggest lingering questions about Camilla's past is whether she ever truly loved Andrew Parker Bowles, or if he was merely a placeholder for the man she really wanted. Their marriage lasted over 2 decades, suggesting that there was, at the very least, a bond between them. But was that bond based on love, or was it a relationship built on convenience and social expectations? Some who knew Camilla during her early years claim that she did have affection for Andrew, but that her love for Charles was stronger. From the moment she met Charles in the early 1970s, there was a connection between them that never truly faded. Even when she married Andrew, letters continued to pass between her and Charles, and their emotional attachment remained intact. Some believe that Camilla viewed Andrew as a safe choice, someone who could provide stability and status at a time when she had no guarantee that Charles would ever be allowed to marry her. Andrew, on the other hand, was no stranger to extramarital relationships, and his own affairs may have played a role in why their marriage lasted as long as it did. If Camilla had married someone who was deeply devoted to her, the situation might have played out differently. Instead, their marriage operated under a set of unspoken rules. Both had their own lives, their own interests, and their own relationships outside of their marriage. But in the end, when the dust settled, it was Charles who remained Camilla's true love. And whether Andrew was ever truly in her heart remains one of the greatest unanswered questions in this royal scandal. The public's hatred for Camilla. For years, Camilla was one of the most despised figures in Britain. She was labeled the homewrecker who had destroyed the beloved Princess Diana's marriage, and for many, she was the villain of the story. When news of Charles and Camilla's affair broke in the early 1990s, the public backlash was immediate and unforgiving. Tabloids painted her as manipulative, calculating, and selfish. Crowds booed her at public events, and for a long time, she avoided public appearances altogether. The British public had adored Diana, their people's princess, and for them, Camilla's presence was an insult to Diana's memory. Even after Diana's tragic death in the late 1990s, the hatred toward Camilla did not wane. For years, she was forced to live in the shadows, unable to step into the royal spotlight without provoking outrage. But time has a way of reshaping public perception. Slowly, Camilla worked on rebuilding her image, engaging in charity work and carefully crafted public appearances. By the early 2000s, there was a visible shift. While some continued to despise her, others began to see her in a different light. Yet despite decades of effort to rehabilitate her public persona, Camilla remains a controversial figure. To some, she is the devoted wife of a king, dedicated to her royal duties. To others, she will always be the woman who shattered a fairy tale. The final betrayal. Was Diana the only victim? For decades, the world saw Princess Diana as the primary victim of Charles and Camilla's affair. And in many ways, she was. She had entered her marriage with dreams of a fairy tale life, only to discover that her husband's heart had never truly belonged to her. The emotional toll this took on Diana was immense, leading to her struggles with mental health, eating disorders, and deep loneliness. She was left to navigate a life in the royal family where she felt increasingly isolated, while the man she married maintained an emotional connection with another woman. But what if Diana wasn't the only victim? What if the true betrayal extended far beyond just one woman? In many ways, this scandal shattered not only Diana's life, but also the carefully constructed image of the British monarchy. For centuries, the royal family had presented itself as the pinnacle of duty, tradition, and moral standing. The Charles-Camilla affair ripped that illusion apart. The public, who had once looked up to the royals as symbols of stability and honor, now saw them as deeply flawed individuals capable of deception and heartbreak. The damage didn't stop there. Charles himself was deeply affected by the scandal, as his approval ratings plummeted and he became one of the most unpopular royals in modern history. The monarchy faced intense scrutiny, with some even questioning whether Charles should be allowed to inherit the throne. Meanwhile, the affair also cast a shadow over Camilla's life, branding her with a reputation that would take decades to repair. The betrayal wasn't just about one woman. It was about the millions of people who had believed in the fairy tale. It was about the monarchy itself and the trust that had been broken. And even now, with Charles as king and Camilla as queen consort, the echoes of that betrayal still linger. Camilla's redemption, how she became queen consort. Camilla Shand was never meant to be queen, at least that's what the world believed for decades. From the moment her affair with Prince Charles became public, she was cast as the villain, the woman who had ruined Britain's beloved Princess Diana and tarnished the royal family's reputation. For years, Camilla endured relentless public hatred, media attacks, and a deeply ingrained narrative that she would never be accepted as part of the monarchy. And yet, against all odds, she now stands beside Charles as queen consort. How did she manage to turn her image around? The process was not easy. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Camilla kept a low profile, avoiding public events and carefully managing her appearances. Slowly, she began engaging in charitable work, supporting causes related to osteoporosis, domestic violence, and literacy. Her dedication to these efforts did not go unnoticed, and gradually public perception began to shift. But even as she worked to improve her image, the shadow of Diana still loomed over her. A crucial turning point came when Queen Elizabeth, after years of resistance, finally extended an olive branch. In the early 2000s, the Queen began to acknowledge Camilla's role in Charles's life, signaling to the public that she was, at the very least, tolerated within the royal fold. When Charles and Camilla married in the mid-2000s, the wedding was a far cry from the grandeur of his first marriage. It was a subdued, low-key affair, perhaps an acknowledgement that their union would always be controversial. Over the years, Camilla continued to prove her dedication to royal duties, gradually winning over skeptics. And then, in the early 2020s, Queen Elizabeth made a stunning announcement. When the time came, Camilla would be known as Queen Consort. It was a moment few had expected, a final stamp of approval from the monarch who had once resisted her so strongly. Even now, as she stands beside King Charles, Camilla's past remains a subject of debate. Some have accepted her, believing she has earned her place through years of quiet dedication. Others will never forgive or forget, seeing her only as the woman who once shattered a princess's dreams. But one thing is certain: Camilla's journey from mistress to queen consort is one of the most dramatic transformations in royal history. 13. The changing perception of the royal love triangle. For decades, the story of Prince Charles, Princess Diana, and Camilla Parker Bowles has been told in black and white. Diana was the innocent victim, Camilla the cold-hearted mistress, and Charles the unfaithful husband caught between the two. But as time has passed, the narrative has begun to shift. Was this truly just a tale of betrayal? Or was it something far more complicated? When the scandal first broke in the early 1990s, the public's reaction was swift and brutal. Camilla was seen as the ultimate villain, a woman who had manipulated her way into Charles's heart and destroyed Diana's happiness in the process. The media painted her as cruel, heartless, and unworthy of public sympathy. But in recent years, a more nuanced perspective has emerged. Some now argue that Charles and Camilla were always meant to be together, that they were separated by royal expectations and outdated traditions rather than personal malice. Charles, as the future king, was pressured into marrying someone considered a perfect royal bride, and Diana, though beloved by the public, may never have been the right match for him. Camilla, on the other hand, understood him in a way no one else did. Their relationship, which had begun in the early 1970s, had never truly ended. But does that justify the pain that Diana endured? Does it excuse the deception that played out over years? Public perception of this love triangle remains divided. While some have softened their views on Camilla, others refuse to forgive or forget. The shadow of Diana's suffering will always linger, and for many, Camilla will never escape her past. But history has a way of evolving, and as younger generations learn of this royal scandal, the question remains, was this truly a love story, or was it simply a tragedy disguised as one? 14. The royal scandal that will never be forgotten. Even after all these years, the affair between Charles and Camilla remains one of the most infamous scandals in British royal history. New controversies come and go, but this story, this betrayal, has never faded. Every book, documentary, and interview that revisits the affair reignites the debate, pulling the public back into the tangled web of royal deceit. But why does this story still matter? Why, decades later, are people still fascinated by it? One reason is that it shattered the illusion of the perfect royal family. Before Diana and Charles's marriage fell apart, the monarchy had carefully maintained an image of stability, tradition, and moral righteousness. They were supposed to be above personal failings, above human weaknesses. But when the affair became public in the early 1990s, that illusion crumbled. Suddenly, the world saw that even the future king was capable of dishonesty and betrayal. Another reason is Diana herself. Her tragic fate only intensified the public's emotions about the affair. Had she lived a happy life after her divorce, perhaps the scandal would have lost its weight over time. But her untimely death in the late 1990s froze her in time as the world's eternal princess, the young woman who had been wronged, betrayed, and ultimately lost too soon. Every time Camilla steps into the public eye, comparisons to Diana resurface. Every time Charles speaks about his wife, people remember how different things once were. The scandal also continues to shape how people view the monarchy today. Even as King Charles and Queen Camilla work to move forward, their past is never far behind. Whether history will ultimately be kind to them remains uncertain. But one thing is clear, this royal love triangle will never be forgotten. The legacy of the royal scandal. The impact of the Charles-Camilla affair extends far beyond just the individuals involved. It altered public trust in the monarchy, reshaped royal traditions, and forever changed the way future generations view the concept of royal duty versus personal happiness. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a turning point. Before this affair, the idea of a king or queen marrying for love rather than duty was still controversial. But after Charles and Diana's disastrous marriage, the royal family slowly began to shift its approach. No longer would future heirs be forced into marriages that looked good on paper but lacked genuine connection. Prince William, for example, was able to marry Catherine Middleton, a commoner, without the same restrictions his father faced decades earlier. Even Prince Harry, despite the controversies surrounding his departure from royal life, was given the freedom to marry Meghan Markle, a choice that in past generations might have been deemed unacceptable. But the legacy of this affair is not just about changing traditions, it's also about the stain it left on the British monarchy. Despite Camilla's efforts to prove herself as a dedicated royal, and despite Charles' decades of preparation to become king, the past still lingers. Every mention of their marriage, every public appearance, carries the weight of history. Some will always see Camilla as the other woman, and some will always believe that Diana was wronged beyond forgiveness. And yet, in a way, this scandal also proved something unexpected, that even in a world of rigid royal traditions, love can sometimes defy the odds. Charles and Camilla fought for decades to be together, facing public backlash, family disapproval, and political obstacles. Whether one sees their love story as romantic or selfish, it is undeniable that they never let go of each other. As history continues to unfold, one question remains: will time ever heal the wounds of this scandal, or will it forever be a mark on the royal family's legacy? One thing is certain, this story will never fade from memory, and the echoes of the past will follow King Charles and Queen Camilla for the rest of their reign. The never-ending debate. And there you have it, the shocking betrayal, the long-hidden secrets, and the revelations that changed royal history. But now, we want to hear from you. Do you believe Camilla was truly in love with Charles all along, or was this affair driven by something else? Was Andrew Parker Bowles a silent victim, or was he in on the game? And most importantly, was Diana the only one betrayed, or was this a scandal that shattered an entire nation's trust? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss our deep dives into royal secrets. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.